to our first world music lesson. So I decided that for the beginning, we're going to start right here in the United States of America and work our way out, because next month is Jazz Appreciation Month, and jazz was born here in the United States. So let's start with a couple of things before that, though. We're going to start today with folk instruments. We're going to talk about two folk instruments today. We're going to talk about the banjo and the dulcimer. So let's get started. Folk music is a type of music or genre of music that comes from old traditions. So anytime we use the word folk music, we're talking about music that's from a long time ago that's been passed down from generations to generations. Most folk music is passed down by what we call rote method, which is where a teacher sits down with a student and teaches them the song by playing it for them or singing it for them, and then the student repeats it back as many times as it takes for it to be memorized. And then that student would pass it down to his or her students, and so on and so forth. That's how folk music has become so widely influential and how we still remember it to this day. American folk music is mostly known for its instruments, because when we came across the ocean from Europe and other places such as that, Africa, we didn't have the fancy materials that we did back in Europe and those other countries to create the instruments like flutes and clarinets. Instead, what we used was what was just lying around: wood, metal, making strings out of things that we could just find, twine, that sort of thing. And we even used things such as spoons, wash basins, which is where people took their baths, and sticks, because that's all we had. The first instrument we're going to talk about is the banjo. The banjo has an interesting history because while it is pulled from the idea of other instruments, such as the ones from Africa and India, like the ravastron, it is purely American built. When we started creating the banjo, it just kind of took on a life of its own, so that now, even in other countries, when we say banjo, they think of the one that was adjusted and adapted in America. It's widely believed that the banjo actually came about because when the African American slaves were brought from Africa across the ocean to work on plantations and southern fields, they actually brought the idea of the instrument with them, and it was such an easy instrument to create that they would use whatever they had lying around to create the instrument to sing and dance to. Thomas Jefferson even wrote about the banjo in his book that he wrote in 1784. And he didn't call it a banjo though, he called it a banger. A banjo is made out of mostly wood and metal with strings on it. So it's a string instrument because that's how we make the sound. There are two different types of banjos. There's a 5-string banjo, which you play by either strumming or plucking. And then there was a 4-string banjo, which you would play with a plectrum or an early pick. And some banjo players include a thimble, which is a little metal cap on their thumb that they can use to hit the instrument to create a percussive sound with. Now, the dulcimer is an instrument that actually came from an instrument called a zither, which has a wide range of countries that it comes from. We've seen examples of zithers from India, from Europe, from Africa, from Japan. There are all different types of zithers, but the dulcimer grew up here in the United States. A zither is a shallow, flat box with strings stretched across it, and you play the strings with a metal pick that goes on your thumb. Now, a dulcimer is a little bit different because it doesn't have as many strings. Most dulcimers that we know today only have about 3 or 4 strings. 2 of the strings are usually what we call melody strings, so they play the main part of the song. And when I bring out my dulcimer later, I'll show you what I mean by that. And then the other strings are for harmony or our drone, which means that they're just going to play extra notes to make it a little bit more pretty. To play a dulcimer, it depends on which dulcimer that you have, because we can strum, pick, pluck, or you could even use a turkey feather, which is what old-timey people did when they didn't have anything other than that. All right, guys, so to show you the dulcimer, I actually have a dulcimer. Now, this is a little different than the other dulcimers because most dulcimers actually go on your lap. This is more of a guitar-style dulcimer. So it has 4 strings. The first 2 strings are the melody strings, so they're tuned to G. And then you have your harmony strings, which is D and G. And I'm going to use a pick, but you can use your fingers or pluck as well. All right, let's see if you can figure out what the song is. If you guessed Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you're correct. I hope you enjoyed this video about world music with American folk instruments. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the United States of America again, and we're going to talk about some male composers that are famous and well known in this country. Some of them you may know, some of them you may not know, but we're going to explore them tomorrow. All right, I'll see you then. Bye.